The rumble of engines echoed through the quiet roadside as a group of bikers pulled into a small, dusty town, their leather jackets and heavy boots drawing wary glances from locals who had learned to expect trouble from men who rode that loud and looked that rough. But today wasn't about trouble. It was just another stop on a long ride, until a small figure stepped into their path, no more than 7 years old, clutching something tightly in her tiny hands. Her eyes filled with a strange mix of fear and determination, and before anyone could shoo her away, she walked straight up to the tallest biker, a heavily tattooed man named Ryan, and silently held out a small, crumpled piece of paper with a number scribbled on it, her voice trembling as she said, "This is the last thing my dad left me. I have to sell it." And when Ryan frowned and crouched down to her level, confused, she slowly opened her hand to reveal an old, worn-out wristwatch, scratched glass, faded strap, nothing that looked valuable at all. Yet she held it like it was priceless, like it was the only thing keeping her standing, and one of the bikers chuckled under his breath, thinking it was just a kid trying to make a few rupees, but Ryan didn't laugh, because he saw something deeper in her eyes, something broken, something desperate, and he gently asked, "Where's your father?" And the girl hesitated, her lips quivering before she whispered, "He's gone. He said if anything ever happened, I should use this." And suddenly the air changed, the laughter died, and even the engine seemed quieter as the group realized this wasn't a game, this wasn't a joke, this was a child trying to survive. And when Ryan asked why she needed to sell it, her answer hit harder than any punch. "We don't have food, and they're taking our house." And she pointed weakly toward a small, broken-down home at the edge of the road where a man stood outside arguing with another adult, likely over unpaid rent, and the bikers exchanged looks, the kind that didn't need words, because they had all come from rough pasts. They all knew what it felt like to lose everything, and without another second of hesitation, Ryan took the watch, looked at the price tag the girl had written, an amount far too small for something that clearly meant everything, and instead of bargaining, instead of questioning, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a thick wad of cash, and placed it in her tiny hands, far more than she had asked for, and the girl's eyes widened in shock as she shook her head, saying, "No, it's too much." But Ryan closed her fingers over it and said softly, "Some things are worth more than money, and this watch? It's not for sale." And before she could protest, he carefully placed the watch back into her hand, pushing it toward her chest. "Keep it. Your dad didn't leave you something to sell, he left you something to remember him by." And at that moment, the little girl broke down in tears, not of sadness but of relief, the kind that comes when the weight of the world suddenly lifts, and the other bikers, who moments ago looked intimidating and distant, now stood quietly, some wiping their eyes, others turning away so no one would notice, and one of them walked toward the house, speaking firmly to the man outside, handling whatever situation was threatening the girl's home, while another brought food from their bags, and within minutes, what started as a simple roadside stop turned into something much bigger, a moment of unexpected kindness, of humanity in the most unlikely place. And as the engines finally roared back to life and the bikers prepared to leave, the little girl stood there, holding her father's watch tightly against her chest, no longer something she had to lose, but something she could keep, and as Ryan gave her one last nod before riding off, she whispered softly, "Thank you," her voice carried away by the wind, but heard clearly in the hearts of those who had just been reminded that sometimes the toughest-looking people carry the softest souls, and sometimes the smallest hands hold the biggest stories. The dust hadn't even settled from the biker's departure when the little girl, her name, as they had learned in those fleeting moments, was Amina, stood frozen in the same spot, clutching her father's watch tightly against her chest, as if letting go even slightly might cause everything to unravel again, like a dream that disappears the moment you wake up, and for a long time. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even wipe the tears still streaking her cheeks, because something inside her was trying to catch up with what had just happened, trying to understand how a day that had started with fear and hunger and the threat of losing her home had suddenly shifted into something warmer, something safer, something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Back at the small, crumbling house, the man who had been arguing outside, her Uncle Kareem, stood unusually quiet, his shoulders no longer tense with anger but slumped with something closer to shame, as he watched Amina walk slowly toward him, the bundle of money still in her hand, and when she reached him, she didn't say anything at first, just opened her fingers to show him what the biker had given her, and Kareem's eyes widened in disbelief, his mouth parting as if to ask 100 questions at once, but none came out, because the answer was standing right in front of him, a child who had done what he couldn't, who had faced the world with nothing but courage and come back with enough to buy them time. Where did you get this?" he finally managed, his voice hoarse. Amina looked back down the road where the bikers had disappeared, her small voice steady now. "They helped us." Kareem swallowed hard, nodding slowly, as if trying to accept something he didn't fully understand. We'll fix this, he said, though for once, it didn't sound like an empty promise. But the story didn't end there, not even close. Miles away, the group of bikers rode in silence, the earlier laughter gone, replaced by a heavy, reflective mood that lingered between them like the fading echo of something important. And it was Rian who finally broke it, his deep voice cutting through the wind as they slowed near a roadside stop. "That wasn't just about money," he said, pulling off his helmet and running a hand through his hair. One of the younger riders, Samer, nodded. "Yeah. I can't stop thinking about her. The way she held that watch, like it was everything." "It was everything," another biker added quietly. "That wasn't just a watch. That was her father." Rian leaned against his bike, staring off into the distance, his jaw tightening slightly. And she was ready to give it up just to survive. There was a pause, heavy and uncomfortable. Then Samer spoke again, more carefully this time. "You gave her a lot of money. More than enough for now. But what happens after that?" That question hung in the air, sharper than any blade. Rian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper. It was the price tag Amina had handed him. He stared at it for a long moment, then said quietly, "That number, it wasn't just a price. It was desperation. It was how much she thought her memories were worth." "And?" Samer asked. Rian looked up, his eyes firm now. "And I don't think we are done." Back in the town, life didn't magically become perfect overnight. The money helped, of course it did. It stopped the eviction, bought food, paid off urgent debts, but it didn't erase the deeper struggles, the kind that don't disappear with a handful of cash. Amina still woke up some nights reaching for her father, only to remember he was gone. The house still creaked with age, its walls still thin against the harsh winds. Kareem tried, he really did, but years of failure and bad decisions don't fix themselves in a day. But something had changed. Amina carried herself differently now. There was still sadness in her eyes, but there was also a quiet strength, a belief that maybe the world wasn't entirely cruel, that maybe kindness could come from the most unexpected places. Every day, she cleaned the watch carefully, polishing its scratched surface as if restoring it piece by piece, whispering to it sometimes like her father could still hear her. "You were right, Abu," she would say softly. "It saved me, but not the way you thought." A week later, just as the town began to settle back into its usual rhythm, the distant roar of engines returned. At first, people reacted the same way they always did. Nervous glances, hurried steps, doors closing slightly faster than usual. But this time, something was different. The bikers didn't just pass through. They stopped. And not at the roadside, but right in front of Amina's house. Kareem stepped outside, his heart pounding, unsure of what this meant. But when he saw Rian step off his bike, there was no anger in his expression, no threat, just determination. "We are not here for trouble," Rian said calmly. "We are here for her." Amina appeared behind Kareem, her eyes lighting up the moment she recognized them, and without hesitation, she ran forward, the watch still clutched in her hand. "You came back," she said, her voice filled with something close to disbelief. Rian crouched down again, meeting her at eye level, just like before. "I told you, some things aren't for sale. And some stories, they don't end that easily." Behind him, the other bikers began unloading things from their bags, food supplies, tools, even materials for repairs, and within minutes, the quiet street turned into something almost unrecognizable. They fixed broken parts of the house, reinforced the weak walls, replaced damaged sections of the roof. One of them even set up a small generator to ensure they have electricity. Neighbors began to gather, watching in stunned silence as the very people they had feared were now rebuilding a home. Kareem stood there, overwhelmed, his voice barely steady as he approached Rian. "Why are you doing this?" Rian glanced at Amina, then back at him. "Because someone should have done it for us once, and no one did." That answer hit deeper than any explanation ever could. Days turned into weeks, and the bikers didn't just disappear after that visit. They stayed connected, checking in, sending help when needed, even helping Kareem find stable work through contacts they had. Slowly, painfully, life began to rebuild itself. Not perfectly, not magically, but steadily. Amina started going back to school, her small backpack now filled not just with books but with a sense of possibility. And the watch. She never let it out of her sight. But she no longer saw it as something she might have to sell. It had become something else entirely, a symbol not just of her father, but of the moment everything changed. Months later, on a warm evening, Amina sat outside her now-repaired home, the sun dipping below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the quiet street, and as she held the watch in her hands, she noticed something she hadn't before. There was a faint engraving on the back, almost invisible unless you looked closely. Her small fingers traced the letters as she whispered them aloud. For Amina, your strength is your greatest treasure. Her breath caught. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time, they weren't from fear or loss. They were from understanding. Her father hadn't just left her a watch. He had left her a message. And somehow, through strangers, through kindness, through a moment that could have gone unnoticed by the world, that message had found its way back to her. Far away, on an open road stretching endlessly under the sky, Rian and his group rode on, the wind rushing past them, carrying with it the memory of a small girl who had reminded them of something they had almost forgotten, that even in a world that often feels harsh and unforgiving, a single act of kindness can echo far beyond the moment it happens, changing lives in ways no one could ever predict. Seymour rode up beside Rian, a small smile on his face. You think she'll be okay? Rian didn't hesitate this time. Yeah, he said firmly. She's stronger than she knows. And as they rode into the fading light, the story didn't end. It simply continued, carried forward in every life it had touched, proving that some things, like love, like memory, like hope, can never truly be given a price.